Now, I know some guys who film, and I guess this just depends on the situation, but, you know, there's guys here in Harrisburg who are filming, who have filmed, and there's no money to pay the actors. But they've got great actors to, you know, volunteer their time. Have you had to go that route in any of your major projects?
Well, I did have to do it with some of the actors I had in Priceless, and more so with my upcoming film, Dishonorable Vendetta, where it was one of those situations where it's like, you know, we don't have enough cash to pay everybody. If I did, then, yeah, I mean, I would definitely be happy myself, but I would usually have to just make sure that the actors were well fed, that they would get a copy of the film when it's done, because obviously everybody's looking to build up their reels and their resumes to try to get themselves out there. And also, you know, just that chance to get their name on Internet Movie Database, you know, just trying to, like, make sure that the film comes out in a way that they get more work. So at the end of the day, they understand that as long as they keep working and they keep playing different parts, then the money is not that important, because they know ultimately when the right project comes along, then that hard work will pay off. In fact, I have a very special friend named Mohammed Dion, who worked with me on my very first film when I was still in college. And he was a non-union actor who was also trying to get his start in the industry. And he had a very pivotal role. It was like in a sci-fi film I did called Evil Society. And it wasn't a huge part, but then right after that, he put that scene in his acting reel. And about a year later, he wound up getting a job on Law & Order Criminal Intent. He got a guest spot playing Whoopi Goldberg's son, and as a result, he got his SAG card. So it was like, I was just so proud of him as a result, because of the fact that, you know, I was one of those guys that kind of helped to discover him, and now he's out in Hollywood, and he's doing everything from Fringe to movies with Bruce Willis, and, you know, just, it's unbelievable. So it's like, you know, you never know where these guys begin, and it's always the little things where they start to build up on characters to play so that the big wigs could see them and say, hey, this guy's got talent. And if they know that that hard work will pay off in the end, then, you know, then the money doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you mentioned something that I just told someone yesterday. If you are not on IMDb, you can hang it up. That is such an important tool. If you want to be taken seriously, you just have to be on IMDb. That's where people find you. And then they have wonderful tools. It's a great place to connect. So I'm glad you brought that out. But I actually saw that episode with Whoopi Goldberg. Was he the one? Now you're taking me back. Was he the one who turned against her? Actually told on her?
Yes. It was the episode where he actually squealed on her for the murders, and at the end,
and at the end he killed himself. Yes.
Yeah, he falls off a roof of a courthouse building, I believe, which is ironic because in the movie that I had with him, he actually dies from falling out of a house. So it was like, I asked him, did they see the scene? And they're like, no, it was just a coincidence. So I thought it was kind of funny to notice.
He's just dying all over the place. Hey, if that's his forte, you know, it's paying the bills, you know. Well, good for you. Yes, I actually remember that, so that makes me feel good. It's good to know. Good to know. My next question for you: how much time from the finish of filming, once all the actors you're done and you're ready to do the post-production, how much time goes by until you are completely finished and the movie is, you know, I mean, give us a general idea for viewing.
Well, with Priceless, I started shooting it in May of 2007, and then I completed it at the end of June of 2007. So that gave me like a whole summer just to capture all the footage and do all the editing work. And then I would have members of the crew come in to kind of see it and see like what works, what doesn't, and see how much I could cut down so that it's at a reasonable length. But between that and getting the music scored and also getting the sound mix completed and the color correction, it took about at least like a year and 2 months to get done. But that had a lot to do with just schedules and obviously money being a factor, because none of these things come cheap. And then with the current movie I'm doing right now, I've been shooting it since August of 2009, and then I didn't finish shooting it until last September. Again, that was more to do with just actor schedules and then having to deal with the weather, and that wasn't easy to do, but I think that was more to my benefit in the sense that with Priceless, we had a locked schedule, so we had to get everything done no matter what, because I had these union actors that had to be in and out by a certain date. With Vendetta, all the actors were non-union, so they pretty much were able to sacrifice whatever free time they had to come to Staten Island or the other locations we had in Long Island and in New Jersey to come through, to be on set, and to try to, give their A game to set. And again, it took time, but I think from what I've seen with what we've been producing in post-production right now, a lot of it's paid off because the performances don't feel rushed. They feel like they're very composed and they're very carefully rehearsed. So I'm very happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Philip from our chat room, Philip Schmidt said, I think Dre wore every hat in Priceless. So apparently, and then he also says, since 2009, talking about your latest film, he says, hope he doesn't need any pickup shots. So what do you do if someone gains a little weight, they look a little different? I mean, what happens? I actually saw a movie like that once, and you can see where the actor picked up weight between shots.
If an actor picks up weight between shots, well, I haven't really had to deal with it that much, but usually there's always ways around it. You can always shoot close-ups. You could try to shoot them in whatever direction necessary to try to, hide whatever their real weight is. I mean, I've seen some films. Actually, I was watching a Burt Reynolds movie called Stick, and he was kind of going for this thing where, he had shot the movie while he was still in very good shape, and then he had to go back and do reshoots because of jaw injury he had on the Clint Eastwood movie. So when he did the reshoots, he looked like he was a stick, literally. He just, lost all his weight. And you could tell, his jaw had changed, basically the way he looks now. I mean, that was probably the worst job that they've done with trying to cover up somebody's weight. But, as far as any kind of situation, it's usually down to makeup and trying to compose the right kind of angles to hide all that.
Mm-hmm. In the movie You've Got Mail, one of my favorite all-time movies, I know it's corny, but I still watch it till this day. The last shot with Tom Hanks, every time I see that shot with them in the park, I think to myself, he must have gained weight for that. What's the movie where he was on an island with the soccer ball?
Oh, Castaway.
Yes. I really think he must have been gaining weight for that role because it's so obvious. He gained maybe 20, 25 pounds from the middle of the film when he's just very fit, obviously fit. Mm-hmm. But that last scene, it's like, Tom, no. Can't they do some kind of Photoshop or thing like that? It's just that's the part of the movie that I just hate to see coming. But okay, I digress. Let me give out our phone number again for those of you. We did have a couple of people on the line, but they don't want to comment. They just want to listen to the show, and that's great too. But for those of you who would like to ask a question or share a comment, the number is 347-539-5805, and I'll repeat it, 347-539-5805. So, Andre, how has your first film, Priceless, how did that open the door for you in building your resources for other film projects to come, such as Dishonorable Vendetta?
Well, I mean, once it got out, it wasn't easy to try to get it into film festivals because right then, again, I was fresh out of college, and I really couldn't take the rejections from certain festivals, and I kind of thought, oh, my God, people must think this movie sucks. But then I would go to some festivals like the Black Film Festival and give out copies and find out from the people that I would meet the second time around that, oh, my God, this movie is incredible. Like, it's just a really good story, and it's well put together. But what it did, it didn't get me awards. It didn't really get me into, a bracket where, like, I'm an A-list actor or A-list director. But what it did do was it got people to take me a little bit more seriously and realize, this guy, he's set to do this. So out of nowhere, I would go to, like, this Long Island Filmmakers Connection out at Dix Hills at Five Towns College, and the actors that I would meet and the people that, do a lot of behind-the-scenes work, they would just, like, start coming up to me and say, yeah, we want to work on your next project. Here's my card. Here's my headshot. And they would see the film or they would see the trailer, and right away they knew that, that I was a serious guy and that I worked with some pretty serious people. So it opened the doors in that sense, and people willing to help me out with finding locations much easier. But I think the biggest thing that it did for me was it introduced me to two special guys that I'd like to actually mention, Rico Mancini and Mark Altman, who run a company called Cool Music, Inc. They were mutual friends of one of the actors who was in Priceless, and we had met probably after we had shot the movie. And they had come up to me to do a music video for them, which hasn't happened yet. But they saw the film, and right away they knew they wanted to invest their time into me because even though they produce recording artists, they were also interested in wanting to get into the movie business, especially my producer on Vendetta, Rico. His father was a professional stuntman in Hollywood for several years, so he was always kind of like understanding the mechanics of what goes on behind the scenes. So when I brought Vendetta to him, he was all game for it, not only to just do the music, but he was also involved in helping me on the producing end of things. So he was able to help with getting some actors and feeding the actors and the crew, and also just being there for me every step of the way. Even now in post-production, where we're working together with editing the scenes and doing special effects and color correction. And, he and Mark have just been such a huge godsend to me. If it had not been for them, I would probably still be filming Dishonorable Vendetta right now. But they've really done a lot to help push it, and I've been really appreciative for that. And that's probably like the biggest resource that I was able to earn because of Priceless.
Mm-hmm. Nice shout out. We have someone on the phone line. The last four digits are 7427. Caller, if you have a question or comment, please press the number 1. And that kind of raises your hand and lets me know you're not just sitting there to listen, but you actually have a comment or question. So I'm waiting for that moment. If that's not you, please just keep listening. Because sometimes people don't recognize they have to prompt. Give me that's like a little nudge, like I'm here. So, Andre, tell us about that first film festival. Are there pros and cons? I've never heard of cons, but are there? And if so, why are they? Because a lot of independent filmmakers, that's all that they know. They live to do that. So what's the good side and the bad side of doing that?
Well, this is my feeling. Like, the very first film festival I went to actually was the Tribeca Film Festival. I think it was like the second year that it was running. And, they at the time they were still trying to get themselves together. And I went to a panel discussion which had like Helen Hunt and Edie Falco and Paul Rudd. They were all promoting their own projects, but then they were also giving insight on the industry and insight on the acting world. And it was a nice panel discussion, but the problem was they wouldn't let people in the audience ask them questions. Or actually, no, they did ask questions, but then, you couldn't really go up to them. They weren't approachable. Like, there were all sorts of cops and security guards. And, that's really not what a festival should be. Like, if you're serious about being in the industry, you should be able to go up to these guys. And, yeah, I can understand, like, they don't want to be bothered with, somebody trying to say, oh, yeah, hire me for this project, or, can I work for you? I can understand that, but there's some real hungry people out there who want to really get some knowledge from the guys that have
kind of made it. And then with the Black Film Festival, which is really like the one festival that I've been going to for several years out in Miami, Florida, you know, they've been phenomenal as far as introducing new black talent and also giving people like myself the chance to be able to interact with people like myself who are trying to get their foot in the door and trying to show their work. And on top of that, I think the best part was the fact that the name people like Tim Reed, who was on your show, and Robert Townsend and Blair Underwood, you know, these guys who put out their precious time to meet with guys like me, and not just do it in just a panel discussion, but, you know, they actually will sit down, they'll talk to you, they'll give you some great advice. And, you know, like even with Robert Townsend, he was able to talk to everybody that was in a room when he was doing his class on mastering, pitching your stories to a studio executive. And I would talk to him and obviously tell him about what I've been doing, and he would tell me about how to, you know, you have to realize that you have to be able to make sacrifices in order to reach your dream. And sometimes you have to crawl through mud to get to the point where your dream comes true. So those guys have been very influential to me in the last couple of years and kind of gave me that inspiration to not give up, even when things happen where maybe you get criticized for wearing too many hats on a project, or the feeling that, you know, you're being too ambitious with making feature films. Like, you know, you shouldn't listen to any of that. You should just be able to go out and make a movie like Sidney Lumet says. It doesn't matter how good or bad it is. Just go out and make it and just, you know, try to show it and keep working. And then that will be what gets people to notice you. Not that one breakout movie, but the series of works that you do. That's the pros of the film festivals. And I would say the cons, again, I mean, I mentioned the Tribeca thing, but I think also now with the Black Film Festival, I do feel that they're trying to get more money out of the public. You know, like they're trying to find all sorts of different gimmicks to try to get you locked into their hotels and to do all these different events that will obviously cost the event people money. And on top of that, I also do feel like there are some films that unfortunately are done by the people that are only recognized by name and face whose films are getting shown, and not the ones that are done like me with unknown actors and small budgets. So, I guess it's because it's becoming so corporate now, and I understand that business aspect of it. But, you know, as far as, like, getting awards and that feeling of accomplishment, the awards help, obviously, you know, because it's a good selling point for any of your projects. But I also do feel like it creates kind of a bias. You know, if you're going to make a film festival, make it a festival to just show movies, not to say which film is better than this film. Because there's some films that I hate to say, but that ABFF has given awards to that I don't think actually deserve it, and that there would be a better film that would not get the recognition and still get played. And it doesn't guarantee you that all of a sudden, like, Hollywood's going to come knocking at your door. That's a dream that is not necessarily so. You know, you have to just keep working. You have to keep plugging away out there. Even people now who go to the Staten Island Film Festival, which we started up recently here on Staten Island, again, a fantastic thing to do, but that's what some filmmakers think there is. You know, they feel like that's the only place where we get our films out there, we win awards, and suddenly we're famous. You have to expand. You have to go regionally. You have to go globally, because there's a huge audience, a huge markets for films right now. And to build that awareness, not just at home but abroad, is what I think makes the best filmmakers stand out the most, when suddenly the world's paying attention to you, not just the people in your neighborhood.
It's interesting. I talked to Dan Brennan. I spoke about him when the show first came on, and just hashing out some details for next Tuesday's show. And that's one of the things that he did. That's why I want him to come on to the show. He's going to tell about how that really benefited him. It wasn't until he went abroad, and I think it was kind of accidental. I don't even think that he meant to do it. But once it went viral and it went global. I mean, he's, you know, his film is just really gaining that momentum. So it's interesting that you would say that because I just heard that from him today. So, you know, good points all. So I want to talk about the trends in the film industry, and not just with black cinema, but to an extent, I want to emphasize black cinema. One of the things that I've noticed is that there seems to be a backlash with studios, with the major studios. And I think that's why so many independent filmmakers are really just coming out of the woodwork, so to speak. No offense. But what do you think about, is there a trend that's happening now? Is there some kind of resurgence for the indie filmmaker? Where do you see it going?
Well, this is what I think is happening right now. I mean, for years, it's always been about, with Hollywood, to try to make it as a factory that puts out films to make money, and if it's successful, they'll do franchises, they'll do sequels, and so forth. What's happening now, I think, is you're seeing a lot of remakes, you're seeing a lot of reboots of films that once they hit like a third movie, then they don't work, so it's like we have to change up the cast and the crew.
Right.
But what I think in general is happening is the studios are now run by not guys who are experts at films, but they're run by these multinational conglomerates. I mean, I can't really say off the top of my head, but like News Corp with Fox, or, you know, Time Warner with Warner Brothers, and, you know, with Universal. And, you know, these studios are suddenly becoming more dependent on what sells, and not even just what sells, but what's going to generate sequel after sequel, what's going to have video games, and can we make this in 3D so we could make the ticket prices go up? And it's getting frustrating. And don't get me wrong, there's some wonderful filmmakers that I'm still happy to still have around, the James Camerons and the Steven Spielbergs and Peter Jackson, and guys like Chris Nolan who are coming up who still understand the fundamentals of making good story. But at the same time, there's a lot of films that are just like being thrown out there with rush release dates and throwing in actors who are not right for the parts, but because they're successful and everybody knows who they are, they're going to bank on them. So that makes it much more harder for somebody like me to look at Hollywood and say, you know, do I really want to go out there and, you know, remake Green Lantern all over again because the first one didn't work, or to do anything like that? Like, I'm just sorry to say, I grew up with a lot of these films as a kid that Hollywood was putting out, but it's just becoming more and more disturbing. And, you know, it gets to a point where it's like, why can't you just tell good stories again? Like, some of the films that came out last year, like The Social Network and Black Swan, were fantastic films. They had great stories and great performances. But we don't see enough of that in the major theaters. Like, you don't see those films. Like, even down on Forest Avenue here on Staten Island, a lot of those films don't get those kind of plays. And I think that's a shame. And in particular with black film, you know, I get sick and tired of seeing the lottery tickets and the Soul Planes and the Big Mama's House type movies. Yeah, it gets to a point where I can understand. I had a conversation with somebody on Facebook recently about the whole problem being that, well, don't you feel like when we're talking about what black filmmakers have to do that suddenly we're excluding ourselves? And, like, no, that's not the case at all. The problem is not so much that these stories are being told by Hollywood, but it's how we're being viewed all over the world. You know, if you go to Japan and you're just a very straightforward kind of person of color, they're going to look at you and suddenly think they see Soul Plane or they see something that Martin Lawrence, one of these guys, does, and they think that's you. And I think that perception has to change. I mean, with Tyler Perry, you know, God bless him, man. He has a formula that works, and he certainly makes some pretty decent films and puts a lot of people to work, and Atlanta's film community is booming. But even he has to realize what he's doing is kind of a double-edged sword, because once you sort of find that niche, it's hard to break out of it. And I think he'll evolve eventually, but I think as a black filmmaker, we have to be responsible for the images that we portray out there in the world. But as just a filmmaker in general, it's not a question about selling out and trying to make something that's going to please the people that are giving you the money, but just go out and make a good story. That's really all that it is to it. Get good actors, a good crew, have all the elements in place. Have the discipline to go into it and say, that you're going to make something that will entertain people or make people feel. That's what wins out at the end of the day. And those are the films that wind up being the most memorable, not the ones that make $100 million and then you forget about them a year later.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, that part is true. I agree with you there. And it's funny, you were talking about sequels. I saw the sequel for Transformers today. Not the sequel, sorry. I don't do bootleg. I saw the trailer for the third part coming up, I think, next week. And while I'm watching this trailer, I'm thinking, I'm wondering if that's going to be the last one. How many times can you tell the story about the robots? And I know what you're saying about Tyler Perry, and I'm on that. I'm more for Tyler than I am against him, because the people that he does write for or write about, I know those people. Those are people that are, I grew up with. So I think he is trying to evolve. He did Colored Girls last year. But the problem that I see now with him is that I think people are so used to him putting out that one, formula, as you say, till when he gets really serious, it's almost like people don't want to accept that part of it. I don't think he got a good reception from Colored Girls.
Yeah, I just feel like he'll definitely evolve. He'll definitely change for the better, I think. I know he said he wanted to do a film about jazz, so I think that might be a good turn in the right direction for him. It's something that I feel needs to be told. But, yeah, when he tries to go and he branches out into something else, like he was in Star Trek a couple of years ago, he has one part in that. That was kind of weird to see, because you're used to seeing Medea in the dress. And right now, he's supposedly going to play the new Alex Cross. He's replacing Morgan Freeman and doing a new Alex Cross film. And even that's kind of like, is he the right guy for that sort of thing? Morgan Freeman, he's a legend. But, to have the switch up between him and Tyler Perry is just, it's a little off-putting. But maybe he'll surprise us. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I really do. I think that wholeheartedly. And you know what? We're down to 2 minutes. I cannot believe this time went by so fast. I got to give a shout out. Hey, do you have a website or you're on Facebook? We know you're on Facebook. Tell us where we can find you.
Yes, you can find me on Facebook. Just type in Andre Joseph. My face will come up, obviously. On Twitter, I have AJ Epyx, just AJ Epyx. You can follow me through there. And as far as websites go, you can visit my website at www.coolmusicinc.com/AJ Epyx. And I have a Blogspot page that's just simply, without the www, it's just ajepyx.blogspot.com. There you'll get more info, like up-to-date info on my projects.
And Epyx is EPYX, correct?
Yes.
Okay, EPYX. Thank you so much, Andre, for coming on to the show. I can't believe it's over already. We're going to be talking again real soon, and I definitely want to keep you in mind. And come back to the show, please, because you have so many things coming down the pike. We can never stop this dialogue. We're always going to have something more to talk about. So thank you so much, everyone. That's Andre Joseph of New York. And his latest endeavor will be out this year, Dishonorable Vendetta. Looking forward to seeing it. So thank you so much for stopping by.
Great, thank you.
And that's it for me, everybody. I'm your host, J. Blair Brown. Thanks all in the chat room for coming by, and thank you for listening out there. I love you all. I really appreciate you. Could not do it without you. Join me again, please, on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Have a great week and a wonderful weekend. Good night.